Welcome to Canuck Sasquatch, where we delve into the mysteries of Canada's wildest legend. Join us as we explore the evidence, unravel the science, and share personal stories that bring this elusive, ancient human to life. Get ready for an adventure into the unknown, and be sure to subscribe, like, and join our Patreon for merchandise and extras. Thank you. Hello. This episode is going to focus on John Green, who is known in the community as Mr. Sasquatch, which is a funny name. I'll just refer to him as John Green. He was one of the first researchers that went out to the Patterson-Gimlin site in Bluff Creek to take casts of the footprints to study the area. He also lived in the Harrison Hot Springs area in the 50s and owned and ran a newspaper there. He is well educated and experienced journalist, quite unemotional and objective in all of his work regarding Sasquatch, which I find impressive and inspiring. I'd like to take some excerpts from one of his first books published way back in, I believe it's the 30s. And it is at the beginning, it's the author's preface of his book, The Apes Among Us. And he talks about how incredulous it is that he believes they are probably the most interesting animals on the planet because of its physical resemblance to man and because it's remained unknown for so long. I have to agree. I'm really shocked that the scientific world basically ignores it. I mean, all the material available should be of great interest to everyone. Footprints, film, eyewitnesses. Anyway, he starts off by saying, I do not, quote unquote, believe in Sasquatches. Consequently, this is not a book for believers. He's referring to his book, The Apes Among Us. Nor is it a thriller about monsters. It is the story of an investigation, and one not yet fully concluded. The first 30 years of my life progressed quite satisfactorily without any need for monsters, weird animals, or mysteries of any sort. My profession was newspaper work. My other interests were my family, politics, and sailboats. I was not then and am not now attracted by fantasy or science fiction. And if I do have some curiosity about reports of such things as marine monsters, flying saucers, extrasensory perception, telepathy, I am quite content to await possible further developments with no thought of personal involvement. He says his exposure to the Sasquatch problem came about quite by accident and developed into serious interest through coincidence as much as anything else. If there had not been any good tracks to see very shortly after he first became involved and following that financial support for further investigation, he says he probably would have let the matter drop. Subsequently, experience has shown that neither footprints nor finances are usually so readily easy to come by. Well, that's for sure. Once well into it, he says he found the whole matter far too interesting to get away from, but it had nothing to do with the monsters. Although Sasquatches are described as being very big, there is nothing monstrous about their behavior. A few incidents have undoubtedly been spine-chilling for the people involved, but I have found no one who tells of Sasquatch actually doing anything to hurt them. It's true. In most cases, it was just there, not engaged in any activity more exciting than standing still or walking along. Fascination of the subject for me involves the very thing that I am most inclined to complain about, that the scientific world ignores it. The material available should be of great interest to more than one branch of science. I completely agree. I'll read a little bit from the first chapter, The Ape in the Night. You are sitting alone in the house at night when you hear a slight noise outside, and turning your head, you're confronted by a bestial black face, more like a gorilla's than anything else, staring in the window at you. It's a horror movie come true, the most terrifying thing you have ever experienced. Yet somehow you survive it, and after a while the face is gone. The reason you survived is simple. You were never in any danger in the first place. An animal looked in out of the darkness to see what was inside your lighted room. It wasn't trying to get in to eat you, and it felt no hostility towards you. It was just curious, and for some reason abandoned its usual caution. In reality, you were granted a rare privilege, a chance for a close look at one of the most interesting creatures on earth, and one that very few people ever see. It's too bad you weren't in shape to appreciate it. The face in your window belonged to a Sasquatch, which is either a legend, in which case it is odd that you were able to see it, or the largest of the apes, an ape that lives in North America and that walks upright like a man. If a moose or a buffalo looked in your window, you would probably get quite a shock too, but by no means of the same magnitude. It would be an interesting and unexpected experience. And if the thing stayed there for any length of time, you would probably find yourself wondering whether you could move closer for a better look without scaring it away. The only thing different about a Sasquatch is that it has a good deal more unusual. It is a good deal more unusual, but there may really be a chance that one will someday look in your window. There are people who say it has happened to them. Rod Puller, a lifelong woodsman from Bellingham, Washington, has spent years looking for Sasquatches and is certain that he has some come close enough to hear them and smell them, but he has never seen one. On the other hand, he can point out a house on Texas Street, now in the middle of a built-up area, where a friend of his tells of opening her curtains at 4 a.m. and seeing a huge flat face covered with oyster white hair, very sad looking, with downward sloping eyes. She closed the curtains and told herself she couldn't have seen any such thing. But when she opened the curtains again, it was still there. That was in September 1969, and even then the house was by no means out in the woods, although a wooded hillside came down close to it. I have talked at length with a lady who tells of two such experiences at her home 7 miles northwest of Bremerton, Washington. At 2 a.m. on December 15th, 1971, she saw from her kitchen window a dark-haired, erect animal about 8 feet tall, standing about 5 feet away, apparently looking into the house. She called her 3 children, and they also saw it. The following February, in the daytime, she saw another one, 7 or 8 feet tall, covered with red-brown hair, standing at the edge of the woods near her house, about 25 feet away. That time she was outside in the garden, so she went in the house, and in neither case was there the slightest indication that she was in any danger. Another woman that I interviewed told of stepping outside her house by the Nooksack River near Bellingham shortly before midnight because her dog was barking and seeing a huge dark brown creature covered with hair and with eyes that reflected her flashlight, but with a very human look to its face. It was sitting on an upended oil drum in the backyard next door, its hands resting on the edges of the drum with its arms straight, pushing its shoulders up. As she shone her flashlight on it, it just kept sitting there. So she went back into her house. That was September 1967. An incident near Fort Bragg, California in June 1962 involved a great deal more action, but again, no harm to anyone. Here is how Bud Jenkins, one of the men involved, told the story in a taped interview made by Chuck Edmonds of Ashland, Oregon, a short time after the event. This is Bud Jenkins talking. My brother in law heard the dogs barking and he got up and went to see what they were barking about. We have a fence between the house and the barnyard made of 6-foot pickets, and he saw something standing by that fence looking over the fence towards the dogs, which he thought was a bear. He came back in and woke me up and told me to come out, and he would show me the largest bear I would ever see. It was standing upright. I got up and went out with him, and we didn't see it, so I said, well, wait a minute, and I'll go in the house and I'll get a flashlight and a gun. So I came back in the house, and my brother in law walked to the other side of the house then to look back in the backyard. And as he stepped out from the corner of the house to look back there, this creature stepped over this little 2-foot fence we have out here, right towards him. And he let out a scream and stepped backwards. As he stepped backwards, he fell. So he came into the house on his hands and knees, going like mad. My wife was at the time holding the screen door open for him to come in. I heard the commotion. I ran to the inside door, which we have here before you, step onto the porch. And as he came through the door, I saw this large creature going by the window, but I could see neither its lower body nor its head. All I could see was the upper part of its body through the window. When he came in, my wife tried to close the door, and they got it within 2 to 4 inches of closing, and they couldn't close it. Something was holding it open. My wife hollered at me and said, hurry, and got the gun. It's coming through the door. Of course, by that time I was standing right behind her, here in this door leading onto the porch, and I said, well, let it through and I'll get it. At that time, the pressure went off the door, and she pushed the door to and threw the lock on it, and I walked to the window and put my hand up to the window and looked out so that I could see out into the yard because it was still dark and it was raining, and this creature was standing upright, and I would judge it to be about 8 feet tall. And I walked away from the house, back out to this little fence we have, and stepped over the little fence, walked past my car and out towards the main road. I would judge it to weigh about 400 pounds, and it walked upright at all times that I saw. It never went down on all fours at all. It stayed upright and had a very bad odor. The odor lingered on here for 4 minutes after the creature was gone, and it left a handprint there by the door on the side, which was 11.5 inches from the base of the palm of the hand. It didn't act harmful, really. It acted more curious than harmful, but it certainly gave us quite a start. It was 20 minutes before my brother-in-law could hold a cup of coffee in his hand steady enough to drink it. Of course, he stepped right to the creature and met it right face to face. Frightening though the experience had been, the brother-in-law, Robert Hartfield, agreed that the creature's attitude was one of curiosity, not menace. Sometimes they don't even seem to be curious. Mrs. Louise Baxter of Skamania, Washington, had already had one look at a Sasquatch in November 1969, when a dark gray shaggy biped, very, very big, walked across the Lewis and Clark Highway near North Bonneville, Washington, in front of her car at 10 o'clock at night. The following August, she was driving on the same highway in the evening when she heard a noise that made her think she might have a flat tire. It was still daylight, so she pulled off the road and got out to have a look. Here is her story of what happened after that. I kicked the tire, which was okay, and then bent over to see if possibly something was stuck under the fender to make the noise. I suddenly felt as if I was being watched, and without straightening up, I looked towards the wooded area beside the road and looked straight into the face of the biggest creature I have ever seen, except the one time nearly a year before. The creature was coconut brown and shaggy and dirty looking. It had one huge fist up to its mouth. The mouth was partly open, and I saw a row of large, square, white teeth. The head was big and seemed to set right onto the shoulders. The ears were not visible due to the long hair about the head. It seemed the hair was about 2 inches long on its head. It had a jutted chin and receding forehead. The nose and upper lip were less hairy, and the nose was wide with big nostrils. The eyes were the most outstanding, as they were amber color and seemed to glow like an animal's eyes at night when car lights catch them. It seemed contented there and seemed to be eating, as the left fist was up towards the mouth, as though it had something in it. I screamed or hollered, but whether I made any noise I can't tell. I was so terrified. I know it didn't move while I looked. I don't remember how I got back in the car or how I started it. As I pulled out, I could see it was still standing there, all 10 or 12 feet of him. In the usual order of things, such incidents are not reported to the police, or if someone does call them, there is nothing for them to see when they get there. In the fall of 1975, however, there was an incident with a different twist. It was a policeman answering a call about a prowler who told of encountering the Sasquatch. The man concerned was a sergeant of the police force on an Indian reserve in Washington. Throughout the early part of October, he and other officers had answered several calls concerning some creature that made loud noises in the vicinity of houses, and there had been 4 reports of hairy bipeds being seen. On one occasion, the captain of the police force had shot with his revolver at an animal he saw in the bush beside a field that appeared to be about 6 feet tall and hair covered. The descriptions were indicated that more than one creature was being seen, although not more than one at a time. On October 23rd at 7 p.m., the sergeant was called to a house where something had been heard pounding on the back wall. The woman who lived there had gone next door to her son's home, and there was no prowler in sight, but something had apparently torn some plastic that covered a back doorway, and there was a broken window. At 2:20 a.m. the same night, something was again reported behind the house. When the sergeant arrived, along with several other people, their spotlight quickly picked up what looked like a very large ape standing in the backyard. While someone else held the light on it, the sergeant walked up to within 35 feet of the animal, which crouched down but made no attempt to run. There they stayed for many minutes, while the sergeant wondered what to do next. He had a shotgun loaded with buckshot, but he was not sure if the thing was some kind of human, and if it wasn't, he was not sure how much buckshot it could take. He noted afterwards in his report that it was black in color, would stand about 7 to 8 feet tall, and appeared to have no neck. It was covered with short hair except on the face. He could see no ears, and the eyes were small. It appeared to have 4 teeth larger than the others, 2 upper and 2 lower. The nose was flat, and he could see the nostrils. By the time there were 7 people there, all of whom could see the thing, although only 2 others had approached close to it. Then there were noises heard off in the dark on both sides, and the man with the spotlight swung it off on the right and called that there was another one over there. At that point, the sergeant decided to return to his patrol car. Well, these stories are fascinating, and so is John Green, and I hope you enjoyed them. I will continue to tell more of John Green's stories, experiences, and interviews with people who have seen Sasquatch. This is his earliest book, The Apes Among Us, and of course, he has other published books. Um, his research is really quite amazing, and he's one of the most experienced Sasquatch researchers on the planet. So he will be a subject of future videos. Thanks for listening. Bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe and like, and we will soon have some merchandise available as well. Also, the book is available in PDF format. If you leave comments and ask for it, I can link it for you. Thank you.